Thank you so much for attending our panel here at the Left Forum this morning. My name is Pojanee Fleury. Everybody calls me PJ, so real simple, PJ. I am the Vice President of Freedom Through Knowledge, which is a grassroots organization that we're looking to register to become an official nonprofit, a 501c3 later this year. But basically what we do is we offer different programming for youth leaders. So we mainly work with youth in terms of leadership development, empowering them to create social change projects and to do things in their community. But we also work with the larger community in the sense that what we want to see happen with the flow of information, the flow of knowledge, is that people can receive non-biased information, either going to look for it on their own, which we encourage, or us providing it. We have a great website in the works, and we have a great Facebook page that we relay a lot of information on. So we try to give non-biased information. I know it's kind of hard to give because sometimes we're working with other news sources, so it makes it a little bit difficult. We don't have like a huge, nice organization like Al Jazeera or something that we can provide resources for people to go around the world and explore topics and research happenings. But what we try to do is at least tell the whole story and give a non-biased look at what's going on in the world so that people can make informed decisions to create social change in their own communities. If they're doing that already, it's great. We encourage that, and we want to be partners with them. So me, myself, I've done a lot of work in the community, but I'll go over that a little bit when we start the actual panel portion of it, of our panel here today. So what I'm going to do is introduce a short documentary that Scientific Soul Sessions and Freedom Through Knowledge did in Haiti in 2011. We went and connected with young people, young leaders there, and it was our hopes to kind of listen to them, understand what they wanted out of their community, and give them a voice so that people understand what's happening on the ground in Haiti. So I'll be going to Haiti later on this year. The president and founder of Freedom Through Knowledge, Hugh Signey, is right now working on an assignment in Brazil, and he's actually teaching English to low-income students, and we are going to test like a pilot program out there, like an official FTK curriculum that we have developed for youth leaders. So with that, we're going to watch the film, and we'll get into our panel discussion. Actually, I'm just realizing that you guys should probably be turned around with the rest of the participants to watch the film. And then we'll turn it back around again. All right, so this film is called Haïti Parler. I'm sure everybody's going to be able to come in. No problem. Before I start the film, I would hope that people would come in. Just ask that cell phones be turned off, vibrate, that great stuff, just in case, so we don't get disturbed while we're watching the film. So this film is called Haïti Parler. Again, Scientific Soul Sessions and Freedom Through Knowledge went out to Haiti in 2011. It was a peak climate because the political situation was very, I don't even know if I can describe a word. There was a lot happening at this time. It was after the earthquake that happened in 2010. There was an election that happened later on in 2010 that was not resolved. So they had to go back and do a second runoff, which hadn't been done in the history of Haiti. This is the first time it was done. And there was just a lot of emotions, and a lot of young people were really driving the political climate at this time. They were rallying around a particular candidate. His name is Michel Martelly, who ended up winning the presidency at that time. So you're going to see some of the young people there talking about what they felt, what was happening in their country, and what they wanted to see for the future. And we also spoke to different people here in the States as well that were abreast of the situation in Haiti. So this is basically us media people in the movement creating media and trying to use that as the tool for social change. And then we'll get into that topic a little bit more after the film.
Pensez que mon jeune ici qui a fait une révolution en Haïti?
Moi, j'ai trouvé un sens de leadership ou même de condition pour de façon pour vivre à nous, de façon pour tout pour apprendre. Et c'est dit comme ça, qui j'aime calme plus loin.
C'est pas seulement Cobb qui va le faire, qui va le mettre dans le pays, qui va le laisser dans le pays. C'est jeunes qui sont capables au moins de prendre bagaille en main parce que tout travail qu'on a fait la client, c'est pour capable de permettre que les jeunes au moins pas vivre la situation que la ville connaît.
Culture haïtienne dans la jeunesse la plus perdante, qui veut que c'était une bagaille extraordinaire que les jeunes les ont offert pour cette base du pays et même la société aussi à l'extérieur.
Dessalines did not go to the slave master school. Right. So he had his dignity. He knew clearly that he had a soul, that he was not born to be a slave. When he was trying to build the country, he decided we need some instruction. So the people who were educated were the slave masters. So he left some of them in Haiti so they can educate us. That was the worst thing that he could have done.
The lie that they are spreading about Haitians, if we let the younger generation internalize it, it's not the fault of the younger generation, it's the fault of the generation before. Because if you want to talk about young people, don't look at the young people, look at the generation that knows before them. All right, I have brothers who have stopped talking. My older brothers have stopped talking to young Haitians.
You have to start by teaching young kids in Haiti that they are African. Up to now that we're speaking, when somebody calls the Haitian African, it's like an insult.
What about what we have accomplished? You know, you had Africans from all over the continent coming to a place where they didn't speak each other's language, yet they created a language, they then created an army, but most importantly, they knew that they had to create this belief that was going to tell them you are worthy in the eyes of God, as worthy as the next person. And these are the three elements that created Haiti.
Qui ça pense de NGO, ONG qui n'a payé la
même il va arriver bon côté pas qu'on a rien dit
bagay yo trop cher l'huile cher charbon cher on va acheter marchandises là banane yo cher.
January 12, 2010 is a date that we will never forget in Haitian history. Like our friend Gina Elise says, there's Haiti before the quake and Haiti after the quake. In terms of responses, the humanitarian aid that came immediately was extraordinary. But in terms of long-term intervention, I'm afraid that both the government of Haiti and the international community is not doing very well. The violence against women, the violence against children, the fact that these people have not been relocated, what happened with the cholera epidemic, that should never have, been an issue.
Knowing that, men, the interests govern the world, knowing that men are always interested, we don't know who to trust, but some people are also money greater, coming to be part of the reconstruction, to get their salaries, to get rich, because there will be big contract, and it's not Haiti, it's for Haiti well-being.
I believe in people, all right? Unfortunately, the man who is going to rebuild Haiti, Bill Clinton, believes in buildings. So he's promoting buildings, and he has more money than I am. And what is important today in Haiti? Money. They know already that the oil of Saudi Arabia is going to run out sooner or later. Now, Saudi Arabia, it was believed, had the most important reserves of oil, but it so happened that some people, some experts believe that it may be very well be Haiti. People have always been dismissing the existence of Haitian resources, saying, oh, they always say it exists, but nobody ever proved anything. Well, it is a fact that under Jean-Claude Duvalier there was prospection, and they did uncover oil, and they were getting ready to celebrate the newfound riches in Haiti when Jean-Claude was overthrown.
pays a besoin d'un leader. Et puis le leader c'est Michel Manet. Et puis c'est.
You have had that relationship with Michel Francois, and people who are your age were fighting against what Michel Francois and all his criminals represented. How come you weren't fighting against him too? You were charming with him until you got his name.
The most important thing in the Haitian equation right now is that I believe there are multinationals that are trying to rob Haitians blind, and they are going to use anything. If they don't use color differences, they're going to use something else.
Quand nous pensons à la maniga, on même pas oublier de passer les conditions en Amérique ça paye. Aristide, ça va passer au le matin de
c'est pas un candidat, c'est pas un homme politique, c'est pas un seul monde qui est capable de gagner moyens et disponibilité pour résoudre la situation générale que le pays a vécu depuis des années. Et moi, je crois que ces changements structurels pour bien dans le pays, changement de bagages fondamental bien dans le pays, qui va permettre que Haïti ne soit pas en avant.
When it's our own thoughts that create this alternative universe that disconnects us from the rest of our population, I don't think that I want to use the word slavery, because slavery means that somebody else is imposing something on us, when it's us imposing that a weird perception of reality on ourselves.
Nous non la première révolution ancienne, on a vraiment carrément une révolution, il pas carré comme ça première. OK, parce que nous avons un peuple qui est vraiment intelligent. OK, nous servons avec tête nous. Haïti pas pour construire ça, nous pas construire nous. Si nous pas construire tête nous, Haïti va construire.
We have to go within ourselves so that we can calm down the noise that's in our mind. All right, so it's not only those chains that are clinging in our mind, it's also all of the other messages that the media bombards us with.
Pour moi, nous avons conscience qui marche. À tout moment, nous faisons solidarité, nous disons, j'en ai là, nous pas se poser.
Par révolution, on va faire par exemple, nous allons prendre soit peut-être les noms pour changer ça dans les non. Et pour notre mentalité, nous, il faut que nous ayons un patrimoine, ça, que nous remettons sous pied. Patrimoine culturel nous, à travers la construction des musées, à travers les animations culturelles qui sont capables de montrer vitalité culturelle haïtienne. Et c'est à travers justement là que nous-mêmes nous avons investi pour nous voir si au moins personnalité collective haïtienne capable de gagner une nouvelle forme de dynamisme. J'ai été fait exil à partir de 1980 sous Jean-Claude Duvalier. Mais le mot dans l'exil, moi je me rendre compte qu'il y a un bagage qui vous fait en dehors de l'activité politique, en dehors de toutes les batailles qui ont menées sur le plan politique. Et après 1986, moi je crois qu'il y a un bagage que moi personnellement je me fait pour quand on fait. Et c'est ça qui fait que maison que moi gagné, que mérité de papa, qui était porté disparu en 1982, moi après en pile réflexion et pensé pensez que l'État bon pour transformer en bien pour la communauté de Carrefour?
In 2005, I was in Haiti with my father, Pierre Clitand, in our family home in Carrefour, Port-au-Prince. And we started having a conversation on what it is we can do as a team to support the development of the community.
Monsieur Pierre, par exemple, qui dans une communauté, il va nous expérience. Il y a des gens qui disent, j'en ai un bel monsieur, bon me font un petit comme ça, bon me font un petit comme chaque année de chaque 3 ans. Mais il fait sacrifice, malgré 12 janvier passé. C'est ça, il mettait au profit de la communauté. C'est pour ça que nous garder petit, non?
The community of Frith is one of the most devastated communities, and particularly ever since the earthquake, it's a community that is in dire need. It's also considered a red zone by the United Nations. But our role is to really support the development of youth in Haiti by allowing young Haitians to develop their own projects.
This is what could really help Haiti. Projects, small projects like this, conceived by the community, for the community, with the community in mind, having their best interests in terms of conceptualization of the project, and also in terms of making sure that their input is always present.
Yo toujours dit ça, yo pays pas qu'à reconstruire sans éducation. Mais nous-mêmes qui t'a aimé une Haïti nouvelle, nous pensons que c'est une nécessité pour que nous tous qui là, pour que nous capables de commencer avec la bibliothèque là.
We have Bureau Doléance Sociale, which is an emergency group that developed out of Bibliothèque du Soleil right after the earthquake. And these are a group of fantastic young Haitians who are really committed to their own community, who use their skills to help in relief efforts.
Nous avons utilisé plusieurs jeunes SAO, donc nous avons mis ensemble pour que nous formions le bureau. Donc nous avons formé le bureau pour que nous aidions les communautés. Le bureau a des bases succès vraiment avec un paquet de monde qui est là, que nous connaissons, qui bénéficie, qui se bénéficiaire du bureau, et des petits gens qui bénéficient du bureau.
The motto of the library is building libraries and museums for a just society. It's an example of a small local NGOs that needs to be supported by members of the community in Haiti, by the international communities, and we really hope that the diaspora and other people in the U.S. realize that the future of Haiti resides in this kind of grassroots efforts that are really well thought out, and where there's genuine care about the well-being of the population in Haiti.
So, for those of you who have just come in, my name is Pojanee Fleury. Most people call me PJ. And I am the Vice President of Freedom Through Knowledge, which is a grassroots movement. We were one half of the documentary that was just presented here. And what we do basically is provide information and happenings, things that are happening in the world to the larger community so that people can make informed decisions about what's happening in the world as they create social change in their communities. You're welcome to join us. This is the role of media and social change.
Right, thank you.
So with that, a little introduction. We're going to do brief introductions, and then throughout the panel discussion, you'll find out more about us. So I am, in addition to being the Vice President of Freedom Through Knowledge, I am a publisher. I've been publishing since 2007, and my publishing company is Brown Eyes Publishing Group. And I mainly work with magazines, and I have produced some journals for outside organizations, but that's mainly what I do. I'm the one that gathers the information, provides the platform for community members to exchange ideas. So So I have 3 publications myself that I publish in through Brown Eyes Publishing Group. There's actually 5. So there's 2 outside publications, but the ones that I have been publishing since 2007 is Brown Eyes Magazine. It's a holistic health publication that I've been able to blend with positive entertainment. Also have Behind the Scenes Magazine, which is a community, more so like a newsletter than an official magazine, but covering what's happening in the community happenings. And For Haiti Magazine, which is a Haitian cultural publication. It's also informative and educational for our community. So that's a little bit about what I do in terms of media, and then on the other end of social change, I've been involved with several projects, but I also will get into that a little bit more because we're going to talk about social change more in depth during the panel. So I'll let my panelists talk briefly about who they are and the work that they do.
Hi, I'm Peter Liu. I do a lot of work in community organizing, and I come to it through like a background in health and energy work. I'm a practitioner and instructor in Tai Chi, Qigong, and meditation. I've been doing that for a number of years, and so I've worked with different organizations such as Scientific Soul Sessions, which was a big learning experience for me. I'm very blessed to work with some very amazing people there, in particular Fred Ho. I have a book that I co-wrote with Fred Ho called Raw Extreme Manifesto. I'm a live food practitioner, and I organize around issues on nutrition, but connecting that to, the book connects that to larger global issues of social change through food, nutrition, health. This is something that is not usually talked about too much, especially in the raw food movement, which tends towards a kind of specialty, like kind of high-end kind of thing. And so what Fred and I were trying to do with the book is to just bring it back down to like an original availability to people and how we can organize around. We had something called the Raw Fight Club, which is basically a potluck community dinner. And through that, we would talk about issues of food sovereignty, food justice, and how one can proceed out of a personal experience and then connect with people around food and talk about how that has big effects throughout the social movements. And also blog, and that's a way I use media, which is I try to use media in a kind of conversational way. I actually really do a practice called dialogue, which is taking conversation to another level in which your interaction and your way of checking how you communicate with people is a flow of meaning that I think is the aim of media and communication. Is not so much like I have a point of view here and you have your point of view, but rather how can we find meaning together in the moment. So it's a very interesting way. It's kind of like taking meditation to a group setting, and through my practice with that and my study of that, it seems to actually have a very powerful effect in understanding how social society works. And within certain group settings, it can actually mirror culture at large. And so through that, there can be a transformation through consciousness, which is sort of my focus, how to transform from within, how to create freedom within your own mind, and to self-examine and to bring that back out. So media to me is all about like a free flowing of meaning that we create together. So that's a little bit of something. Hopefully we can have a conversation about that.
Okay, my name is Rasheed. I am president of Roots Community Film, which is an organization based on education. And education from the standpoint that particularly the youth, are empowered through self-esteem. We have a situation, I believe, in the world, whereas people have great ideas, great concepts. However, they don't have the inner self power to expose it, to develop it, to take it to another level. So what Roots Community Film basically do, or has done over the years, we've been in existence, 501c3 number for about 35 years now. And we use different mediums to achieve our goal. One of the mediums that we have used is homeless shelters, whereas we have the youth working with the elderly. And what we would actually do is establish a situation whereas the elderly and the young youth would get together and feed the homeless. So it's like the elderly empowering the youth through knowledge and experience, and the youth respecting the elders, and this like conjunction just creates a situation whereas it's like fertile ground to grow, and it's a very interesting thing. The other thing that medium that we use is the public access TV. That's the media aspect, and we had a show, or have a show, myself and others. The host is a co-founder, Jim Hill, who is an educator, an artist, and many other things. However, this show, myself and others, was on for about 13 years, and then we expanded and ran into a beautiful young lady. You heard a little bit about her. In fact, she's the one who put this thing together, and that's PJ. And presently we have a program on BCAT and Manhattan Cable. And what we're doing is, the name of her TV show is Brown Eyes. Brown Eyes TV, which she mentioned a little thing about the magazines, but it's basically the same thing. Bringing information to empower people to establish their goals and center themselves so that they can collaborate with other folks and get an understanding, because it doesn't really matter so much in terms of if the person wants to develop the community, if they want to develop themselves individually, if they want to collectively interact with other entities. The thing is, if you don't have the self-esteem, you can't do anything. You could have a degree. You could have great ideas, but if you can't speak, if you're afraid to, get out there and make that move, it doesn't really mean anything, in terms of the collective, because like bees, like ants, and other things in society, they all work together. They all know what they're supposed to do, maybe by osmosis, since I can't speak analogy or biology, but just observing them, somehow they seem to get their stuff together and do what they have to do to have a community. So basically, what I'm trying to say is we're trying to develop within the individual that concept, whereas they can interact based on what they have achieved inside and what they are comfortable with, and then bringing it forward. So we can get more into that. I hope that was a nice introduction to what we do.
It reminds me of Marcus Garvey that said, if you don't have confidence, then you already lost before you started. Yes. You already lost the race before you started.
Yes.
So with that, our talking points for the panelists is to really describe what media is. It takes on a lot of different mediums, forms, shapes, and this time to 2013. So we just wanted to get more in depth of, what media is, because it does mean different things to different people, and we kind of touched on that. And I'll start with Peter on this end for this one.
Okay, I think it's important for for us to see media as ours, a tool for social change that we have control of. So there's a lot of new media now that's available, social media, that I think are very powerful tools that people are using, and I think it's, as I was saying earlier, it's really about a conversation, so that we can connect from one person to another, one person to many people, and we can exchange information, knowledge, inspiration, and really create through that. So I think kind of like the traditional media are also something that we can use, but I really like new social media as a medium that we can create that kind of reclaim our power through that. It's not it doesn't have that kind of regulations. It's free for the most part, or low cost. So I think it's a really ideal medium for grassroots movements. And like I said, it has such an interactivity that I think is very important. So that's how I see the use of media. And as I was saying earlier too, it's also just person-to-person conversation that I think is very, very vital. And social media, you can have that conversation on a global level at the same time. So I see that the new media, and the way I see the way in which we claim power is that power now is what I would say is like nomadic. And in other words, it moves in different places. It doesn't stay in one place. I think this is a very vital way that we can reclaim power, because now we can have a conversation across different ideological and geographical lines, that we can come together on certain issues, that we don't have to do things, we don't have to agree on everything, but we have certain things we can agree on that we want to work towards. That's a way we can build global communities, and I think that's through new media.
Media. We use media, and I'm not going to deal with the newspaper, the magazine, TV, internet, and all the other forms that people are using today, or conscious in terms of it being a media form. We also use art, we use dance, we use whatever vehicle to get the message across, so that we can make connections with the larger body of people. Only because today, I guess, well as yesterday, but I can only deal with my time span and what I've read in the past and what I perceive is going to happen in the future, is that if we're not using every form to communicate, which I believe is media, then we're going to lose people or not make the proper connections. For example, right now, most of you are using your ears and your eyes and the brain to understand what's being delivered right now. Some of us are using their ears, their eyes, And I'm just going to say, by osmosis, other things like vibrations. You know, I like his vibe. I like her vibe. You can't really describe it in the sense that, you know, if I show you a film, No, it's something that's inert. It's inside. In media, I believe that is what media is all about. It's about stirring something inside of you in a communicable form so that you can go to the next level. In other words, you may be missing a piece. You may have everything, as they say, 99.9%, 0.9999. You come into a session, you ride a train, you look at a tree, someone says a powerful word, and that word gives you the 100%. Or you got the information from your grandmother. You know how grandmothers do. They give us information in parables and riddles and what's that all about when you get it. Then 1 year go by and you go, wow, grandma, that was there what she told me. 3 years go by, whoa, the same message. Wow, grandma was deep. 10 years later, you go, I got what she was saying now. You can't tell me nothing now. Grandma was heavy. 20 years, you go, oh my goodness. And what do? After you have grown on that information, you transfer it to others. Now, you could be a great writer. You could be, as these people in the back, videographers. You could be a great speaker. You could be, even running. You know, you watch people run marathons. Have you ever watched that? If you are using the other eyes, you learn about the people. Some people run on their heels. Some people run on their toes. Some people half run, half walk, and da-da-da-da. But in watching them, you receive something. And that's what I believe media is about. You have to be able to receive something. And so our job, in terms of Roots Community Film, we try to use as many vehicles to communicate to the person or persons that we're dealing with, so that they can get the message. There's no one way. You know, it's whatever way you can get to their heart. Because when you get to their heart, that means you pass the intellect, you pass all the other walls, because the heart is smart. You know what I mean? The heart is one of the smartest things that we've been blessed with. So that's what we try to go after, because that's where the self-esteem is at. So I would like to go further, but I don't want to. Yes. Okay.
So for me, media, I come to media in a different mindset, because I'm a very creative person, and I got the terminology early on of media products, and how people are really creating big business around selling information and communicating information. And I got into media just wanting to really bring something different that wasn't out already. So I came in terms of the platform level, and I ran and got out publications that I'm associated with and been publishing for a while. And creating the platform for others to express themselves is where I see media being, as in terms, and it might be like a little limited kind of view, because I am coming to media with a full vision, and not just falling into what's happening around me. So in terms of platforms, creating meaningful platforms for people to communicate, media is the arena where people can express themselves. There's different types of these media products, especially new out on the market right now. You can see how they've been able to package media with these new websites and different streams, even expanding radio and its reach for online markets. So media to me, it has never been just one thing or another, and it's always been about the expression of people and how they're communicating what's going on in their life. And I've always been kind of on the fence of whether if media is shaping society or it's just a reflection of society. It's like that kind of chicken and the egg question going back and forth. And I would like to describe media, both in my experience and someone that has been engaged in media, as again the platform to exchange ideas and the platform to be creative as well. Because if you are a person in society and you do something, whether it's creating a painting or creating a song, a composition, you have to find a way to get it out there. There has to be a vehicle to move it. And so without it, it would just stay in your house, it would just stay on your mantle, and no one would really be able to appreciate it. And I've been blessed to see different mediums all around the world. I just came back from South Africa, and what I noticed about the media there is that it's way more expressive than it is here. Like the newspapers, and I actually could have bought it. The newspapers are huge, and I think that says something about the society. That here, if a newspaper is this size and you go somewhere else and the newspaper is this size, one, that just shows there's more information being given to that particular community. They have maybe more to say about that particular issue, what they're facing in their lives. So I can't say any more about that, but just to say that society needs media in order for it to grow. So there's a definite there's a connection on how they're going to grow in relation to each other. And I've always been very interested in that. How are people expressing themselves? How is media capturing that and communicating it? So I just have a very expansive view about what media is and how media is in relation to life. I hope that I'm explaining that a little well, because I have a very broad view. It's not just magazines, it's not just newspapers, it is everything that's happening that is transferring life. Did I totally confuse you guys, or did I get my point across? Anybody want to say or add anything about media? Because I actually wanted to include you guys in the discussion as well. Every time that we answer something, I would love for you guys to also provide your opinion. So if you want to say anything or add anything more about media, it would be great. Sure,
Okay.
please.
I feel like I've worked with the media a lot. I feel like I'm somewhat good at it. I feel like I've had opportunities where to really change the dialogue about an issue, for example. But even in those instances, just a few years ago, I started getting a sense that we're gonna, and my work has primarily been with mainstream media, right? So like I feel like I'm like I can write a good press release.
Okay.
But then I started getting this sense a few years ago that the more, and this was while I was with an organization, that the more militant our tactics were getting, the less likely it was that we were going to get that kind of coverage. And there were times when, in my work where we've gotten like huge media coverage, right? The local paper loves us, and that's in general, like that's where I see the dialogue has really changed, is with the more local like papers and the more local reporters who you feel like you have a relationship with, kind of growing relationship with. But anyway, that's been my concern, right? The more militant the work itself gets, the less coverage the less exposure your work gets. So the solution is, which is like you were talking about, it has to be social media, right? Which I'm less familiar with, but then my concern has always been, well, what are the metrics? Like, sure, we'll do we'll put out stuff about an action on Facebook and try to get all our members to put up, to I don't know what to call it, but grab it or like it or whatever. But what are the metrics on that? I know the metrics of the newspaper, right? If we get an article in the newspaper and it's on the front page, I know that newspaper is distributed to how many, thousands of people. If you get a 5-minute clip on the evening news, I know how many people. Like I can look up the next day how many people watched that. I don't know that with social media. I know how many people liked it, but if it's like 100 people liked it, it doesn't really give me a good sense of whether the media piece of an action was effective.
Because you can like something, you can see something and not like it, but it's still
sure,
exposed.
Yeah. I feel like I've shied away from social media. I've really kind of siloed it as this is a work thing, But I see how other people, for example, treat Facebook, and it's like, this is how they're looking at Facebook. It's like, well, I don't want to be one of those things that they're just like scrolling through, right? When I'm like in charge of doing the media for an action, I want to have an impact, right, on someone. Like I want to, as you were saying, like transferring the life. I really like that phrase, right? Like, how do I transfer the life of an action as it's getting more militant? I guess this is, I don't know. It's a comment to the question.
Is that a question?
It's a comment to the question. I will give one example. In math, that kind of, this was when I started understanding that we're going to get iced out. Was during during the occupation in Madison, and at the beginning of that, and I'm in the Midwest. At the beginning of that, they got huge mainstream coverage, right? And within a week, I would say maybe even less, right? Within days, like it was like most of what you could find out was through social media, right? It was very, very little on mainstream media, and it was deliberate, right? It's like there's no, it's like you can complain about the mainstream media, but there's no need complaining about that, right? It's just like that's their function. Anyway, but that to me was a really interesting example of watching that dynamic happen, right? This is really militant. It could get out of hand here. We gotta stop covering it, right? The media, the TV trucks pull out, and the CNN truck goes back to wherever, it's like, and within days. So that's my question within a question within a question. How do we deal with it?
Yeah. So one of the things that I've noticed about social media is that you're right, is impersonal. I have seen them trying to put in different tools for us to use and kind of track what's happening. Like just recently, I think maybe in the last year, that if you have a page on, like a fan page on Facebook, they'll tell you how many people have actually viewed your posts. And they have little statistics and things like that that are, helping us to use the medium a little better. Views on YouTube, anytime someone goes to your link and watches your video, it tracks how many views you've been able to get. But also at the same time, it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't really give you solid numbers on how many people were actually exposed to this. It's still, a gap there. One of the things is that even with however you're using Facebook or social media, it also has to be complemented with something else. If you're just doing social media, things like that, it's not going to be effective in terms of really getting the word out there and affecting people. So the goal is to kind of use, and it's weird now because it makes it a little bit harder because you want to use Facebook, you want to use Twitter, you want to use YouTube, and try to get into the mainstream plug as well. So it's, and also if you get into the mainstream plug and you say, well, this is what we were doing, if you don't have a website, if you don't have at least a Facebook page or a YouTube page, then people won't be able to find you because that's where people are, going to find more information, and it's not, a lot of snail mail is not happening, people are not really calling, they want to go to an internet platform, they want to go to that social media platform to get more information. So it's really twofold. On really using social media effectively I guess is really the question, because so many people are on there, you can't help but at least put a little something on there, even if it's just like one post, there are people that will check it out and will see it. How effective it is, that's up to the person as well. How many times are you putting it out on YouTube or Facebook? How many people are you friends with? So I don't know. I feel like it complicates it a little more, but still very effective at the end of the day.
I'd like to say to your question, Occupy Wall Street was a great example of what you presented. Because a lot of people were saying that Twitter, we got a new revolution, and they tweeting all over the place and blah, 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 and the major media came. However, I think we were leaving something out. Some people may say the elephant in the room, the gorilla, whatever. And that is major media is no longer like it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago. They were independent. People that owned this media had objectives in terms of delivering news and information like that, and not so much controlling what's going out. In other words, today I think we have Tom Brokaw, and yesteryear you had, I think it was Channel 2, we had all the big news guys, and they were Walter Cronkite and all these kind of people. They were a little more independent. You can, I don't like to use this word, but I'm gonna use it now. You could trust some of what they were saying. They weren't trying to skew you in a direction. They were trying to deliver the message, and you get it and you do what you want with it. Today, media is owned by big business. It's like the news department didn't make any money back in the day. But today, the news department has to make money, otherwise you're out of here. That being the case, it has become a fashion show. How good you look. You can't be too old if you're a woman. Guy can be old, he can still be there. But if you're a woman, you can't be too old, you can't be too fat, you can't be too skinny. It's turned almost into a what's it called? Like a comedy show. You're not really getting news. You have to go to social media, you have to go to newspapers, you have to search. It's no longer, okay, I'm gonna look at 60 Minutes. And I'll get whatever I'm going to get. You have to go to 60 Minutes, log on, call your friend. Did you check out so-and-so? Yeah, that's what I was saying. Now check out this. And boom, boom, boom. In other words, you have to be like a news junkie. Then you will get some of the information, because maybe you have to go to BBC. Maybe you have to go to, Al Jazeera. It's different today. So you have all these mediums, and these mediums have bits and pieces of the information you need to make a complete thought. So I guess what I'm trying to answer, or how I'm trying to answer it, is that things now are as such, if you are not concentrated on what you're actually trying to do, meaning you can be sidetracked this way or that way, but if you're concentrated, then you'll know which medias to use. Which outlets to use to get your message across. Because if you're throwing a party, for example, or just this event is on WBAI, it's on, all the left magazines, etc., etc. But I don't see it on Channel 7 News, if you get my drift, or Channel 2 News, or so that's just an example of how this thing is working. It's like almost underground. If you're not aware of it, you won't see it. If you don't know about Twitter, and these other medias, you're just not going to get it. So what does one have to do? They have to write on every page, so people can get it. On every page. If you do Twitter, do Twitter. If you, everything. I'm gonna leave it there.
Anyone else? We were talking about media. If anybody want to offer any opinions, their experience with media?
Just a couple comments on what we just discussed. Like, I was part of Occupy Wall Street here in Ducati. I was actually like living in the park for a couple months. And like one thing that I noticed with the use of the mainstream media was when we had our marches and there was police brutality, that's what they covered. Or when protesters were attacking cops, that's what they covered. And when our demonstrations didn't fit that narrative, mainstream media didn't cover it. But the people involved did, and that's when social media really kicked in. But then like a downside of a lot of the activism that happened down there with the social media was that because social media and like left activism is kind of trendy here in like the New York college scene, a lot of people were just like liking events and not showing up, or they would come and they would take pictures for half an hour and leave, or they would be on their phone the whole time and not interacting with people that actually were organizing and living in the park and trying to get actions done. And when you approach them, a lot of like the younger people didn't want to talk to you because we were so isolated. We had like this fear of other people for some reason. So there's like give and takes with the rise of like Twitter and like your iPhone.
Yes.
Doing video on your iPhone because everyone is so passive behind the camera and not interacting and not engaging in the conversation sometimes.
Now, thank you for really providing that real-time information about your experience, because we can take away from that with future social movements. It's great to have something that is effective, and we just want to make sure that it's sustainable. So if we are using a platform, it's going to be here for, it's not going anywhere. So if we're going to use it, what's the best way to use it? So in just putting out an event and we want people to come, then one thing that I saw Facebook start doing is that you can buy tickets right on the link there on the event page. So if we can kind of, and that helps with fundraising, get people to buy advance tickets, even if they don't come, or if they do and they don't participate, it's still fine because we still were able to use it in an effective way. And fundraising, we always need funds to push our movements forward. So just kind of understanding that and looking in the past and what we can change for the future.
One of the things that I noticed about specifically the Occupy movement was the rhetoric tended to be top-down. You would have a group of people producing language that was supposed to be effective across the nation. And I mean, even if you take the word dresser, like across in the U.S., like we have 6 different ways of saying it, like chifforobe, dresser, chest of drawers, like it changes throughout the nation. So it's like, how do we apply that concept to social media? How do we make rhetoric not universal but colloquialized to each region and activating those regions as effectively as possible in a language that they understand? If anything, I'd say that like as an observer and as someone who participated in it, that was sort of a downfall of Occupy, was expecting people to understand this universal mimetic language that was good on the internet and looked good there and people would participate in, but when it came to real life, face-to-face conversations, they didn't understand what each other was saying.
Definitely understand what you mean. I don't know if you want to make a comment?
Yes. To that point, it's excellent because that's part of the problem of what is that? The Tower Bible, all those languages.
Yep, exactly.
Well, there is a beauty in that. The beauty is to know that we are confused and to unravel, because this is our task, to unravel that which we don't understand so that we can communicate to a larger body of people. And the problem, I believe, is, or how to solve the problem, is that one, the young lady, the camera person in the back, spoke about how people were individualized. Well, if we could break that, then that would be a large step towards community. Because if we do not break, I'm going to use the term, the chains that are on our minds, because I can live in Scarsdale, or I can live in the projects, or I can live in right here in New York City, just cooling out. But if I can't communicate to the person in Scarsdale, if I can't communicate to the person in Texas, if I can't communicate to the person in China, because the world is big now, then we have a problem. So we have to find a way to use more than just our words, so to speak. We have to use our hearts, because it has no color, it has one language, love, blah, 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 and you can feel if a person is with you or not. Because sometimes we can just and the person's going, you're into food and health. Oh, that's great, man. Wow. And soon as you go outside, they got a hamburger or whatever it is, so you didn't really get to them. They like your speech. They like your antics, but somehow it didn't penetrate. So I believe you have to use your heart. Because people generally, when you're using your heart now, I'm saying use your heart through the mediums that we already labeled. Because the heart is broad. The language of the heart is universal. I had a job one time, and a guy came in. He was German. He didn't speak any English. He was the electrician, I was the wall upholsterer. We had to work together. There was no way, and we had time frame. There was no way for us to do this job if we didn't communicate. So we looking at each other. And I'm thinking, because I'm an artist, we got to get this thing done, the decorator's going to be here. So immediately I looked at him and said, Stone Age. He looked at me, because I was able to just do stick figures. And it worked. He hugged me, I hugged him, and we got the job done. So it was the heart, because if I went at him, he's German. It's already cut off. But because he was open and I was open, we found a medium, and it was stick figures. So I'm saying to you, basically, or to all of us, we have to find a way to use the heart through these mediums, because the heart is not biased. It doesn't have all those hang-ups. And to your point when you were saying Occupy, well, I was down there too, and I saw Russell Simmons and some other, they were strutting through. It was a photo op. And for a lot of people, it was a photo op. This is something new. In my time, Black Power, Black Power. Well, I don't see nobody with Black Power now. It was a fad. Afro. Yeah, man, got my afro. Then everybody had an afro. It was a fad. Locks. That was a cultural thing. Today, anybody wears locks. So it's something that we have to stop fadinizing and really come from the heart. And I think that will help us go a long way.
I mean, if the right already does it really well. Like, they go after the heart, but they do it with statistics, and they do it with market research, and we're kind of battling against 100-year business plans and billion-dollar endowment funds.
Yes.
So how do we use that? Like, how do we use that technique of saying this is the polarization point where we can excite passion or we can encourage apathy, and rather than marginalizing people and encouraging apathy, actually retaining customers, so to speak? Like, because it's like we have to like use language and go after the heart, but that statement sort of says that we're going to have that yes or no answer.
I'm a big believer in using the tactics of the mainstream to accomplish what we want in the the underground. I work with a lot of this is with another publisher. I'm involved with this project, Western Africa Magazine. And just off the bat, just looking at it, you would think that this is something maybe sold in one of these newspaper shops, maybe in Grand Central Station or something like that. But this is all about development in Africa, what's happening on the ground, who's involved with the developments, what NGOs are there, what larger bodies, IMF and this and that, who's there, and what they're doing to expose it, to be able to communicate that with the larger communities, Western Africa, but we all want to understand what's happening there so that we can take away for what's happening in the future, because we're all learning lessons. All of these things that are happening today, what's happened in the past, are lessons for us in the future. So it's packaged in a very mainstream media kind of way, but it's definitely speaking about different issues, speaking about issues that are focusing, that are relevant to the everyday people, the everyday situation. So I'm a big believer in that. So if we could get more statistics, if we get more market research on what our needs are, I think would be a lot more effective, because you're right, they've been doing this for how many hundreds of years. They know that it works. They have their own formula, and we're always constantly trying to play catch up. But the formula is there. They kind of created a model on how they can accomplish this, and there's no reason why we can't use the same tools.
Thank you.
Yeah, well.
That will give you something to think about.
So actually, that was going into our next topic, which was social change. I wanted to have the opportunity to talk about the social change projects that we are involved with. And again, we're going to open it up to the space if anybody wants to talk about their programs and their projects. And I'll start with Rasheed for this one.
Social projects. Social change projects. One is PJ. We do a TV show called Brown Eyes, and we interview different people. We bring information to the community through interviews, we just did the NAN, which is the National Action Network. We just did their media coverage. We filmed that. We also use the owner. He's the artist, and he uses his art to get the message across. We also do one-on-one and group communications. I don't want to get too deep into that. Suffice to say that we deal with the self-esteem of the person or the individuals, and we try to I don't want to say reform, because it's not actually that. It's sort of revolutionary. That, like, the way you live, you're not going nowhere, and get them to open up and find another way. So that's basically what we are doing with the mediums, to empower them to do change, because I'm not here to tell you which way to go and all of that. I'm just here to try to empower you to do what you say you want to do, and that's basically what we try to do in terms of using TV, magazines, blogs, all of that, and of course the social interaction in life, which I think is really the major piece, because it was already said in terms of in this discussion. I just use Occupy, since everybody's sort of familiar with that. But we can use the subway. Many of us come here through the subway, public transportation. We don't look at each other, we do all these things, and I just met him here today. But I see, if I saw him on a train, I don't know if I would have been able to look at him like, hey, how are you? I don't know, because we're caught into this lack of communication. You know what I mean? So what we're trying to do is use these different mediums, discussions, what I mean by that, rap sessions, even taking youth to the museum, taking them to the park, taking them to the beach. You know, PJ and I, the past summer, she wasn't into too much relieving herself, so I took her to the greenhouse, you know, Brooklyn Botanical Garden. A whole new person. Oh, shoot. And, well, that opened her up. So that's where I believe media, or using different forms of media, and to me, media is the sun. Media is the light, the grass, because it communicates something to you. Many of us don't observe grass. When we go to the beach, we just get in the water. We don't look at the beach and say, whoa, I'm nothing, because you know that's so big. You know, so it takes you off your ego and go, I'm like the grain of sand. If all of us don't get together, there is no sand. You know what I mean? We can be individuals, but if we don't get it together through some form of media, so we can have social change, there will be no change. You be your one blade, you be your one blade, she'll be, and so on and so forth, but there will never be grass or lawn. You know, because we so into our personal development, so to speak, or possessions or whatever it is that is so personal for us that we can't attach to someone else. So in using the social media for change, that's our objective in the different things that I mentioned that we try to do and accomplish. We even use modeling for social change. Why? Because a model must rest, eat right, have a good attitude, and have some self-esteem. So we use the modeling industry as a vehicle. Some of these ladies and men will never become models. That's not even the point. But what they will become is conscious of their health, conscious of how they look, conscious of their environment around them. So that's just one of the examples how we use, when we was talking about bringing in, using the major media and how they use it. They use modeling for you to change your clothes. You know, what's hip today is not hip tomorrow, so you might have to throw your stuff out. If you into that mode, you always got to have, you know, whatever it is that they're showing you in the different magazines or the different media, what to wear, and when you're wearing it, how important you are, because you are wearing that. You know, if you got Nike across there, and you have a plain shirt, well, I might look at the guy with the Nike because he looks more hip. At least that's what the sports magazines tell me. That for me, it's do you run? If I look like a runner. Do you play ball? If I look like I play ball. I mean, I didn't do any of that. I'm just styling. I like the style. And if I tell you, no, I just like the style, you go, oh yeah, I can take that. Or he likes the style. I can't even get to he likes the style because I can't stand that swoosh or whatever they call that. You know? So all I'm trying to simply say is that all the media, or all the vehicles, we should try to use them for change. Even if it is CNN, there's always a way to play with them. You know, there's ways to play the game, but you got to know yourself and have this self-confidence to make the change. Because some people say, I'm going to get involved with government to change it. Okay, that's cool. 10 years later, they're like everybody else. So something happened in that institution that they entered that maybe we are unconsciously putting out there to watch out, particularly for the youth or people that want to go there. Something's happening. You said you were in major media. What's your name? Abraham?
Yeah. I mean,
okay.
I've been an organizer, but I've been able to get it for coverage.
Okay, great. However it goes, that's great. The point I wanted to make is, you don't look like a guy from a certain social class, but you were able to accomplish it. So, excuse me?
I'm a chameleon.
Well, that's great. That's great, because that's what you need to get ahead. So you're saying exactly what our group wants to bring to people. You have to be able to change, adjust, adapt. But the core of you, which is your heart, doesn't change. You know what I mean? If it's raining outside, you need an umbrella. If it's hot, you may have to take off your winter clothes, etc., you know. So, like that.
So yeah, we only have about it's down to 11:50.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So we'll get more into it, because I definitely want to hear what you guys are organizing around. So go ahead, Peter, and tell us. And definitely mention scientific soul sessions a little bit more, because I think it goes a lot with the theme of the conference.
Yeah. Well, first I want to say that, I think the point of using media for social change is to take action. So we have different ways of measuring, who's looking, who's whatever. I think a lot of media, especially sort of like Fox, whatever, is oriented towards immobilization. Creating fear, and so becoming passive. And even as it was pointed out, it's easy to like something and you or sign a pre-written, protest on a certain issue, and then you feel like you've done your thing. Some of these things have like effects. Maybe they have ripple effects. But again, passivity is a bit rampant. So really the measure is like, who's going to make change, who's going to take action. And we take action by engaging. So you use the media to connect, to engage, and it's really about person to person. And are you really connecting? And I really appreciate what Rasheed was saying, is because in the end, what you're connecting is through your heart. You have a certain desire to, and your heart is very important, because without a very strong desire that comes from here, you're going to come up against an obstacle and you're going to give up, because you say, I don't know how to get this done. Well, if you really are passionate about it, you're going to find a way. So what it comes from is you have to feel that what's the most important thing? How do you going to devote your life, your energy, because there's only 24 hours in a day. Everybody's got the same 24 hours, so how are you going to utilize that time? What resources available? How are you going to find the way to connect to people? And I think a lot of it comes down to, how are you going to, what we need to do is become leaders and create leaders. And once you do that, your influence spreads like wildfire. But you need to get that spark, and I think the spark comes through connecting to people's hearts, because there's so much fear going on that we just don't trust what we have inside of us. And I think, we're very largely manipulated by larger things to disconnect and feel disempowered. I feel like we cannot, and once, I think we said somewhere earlier that if you, it was probably in different words, so I'll just put it in other words. If you say that you can't, or that you can, you're right in either way. So if you feel like you can't, guess what? Nothing's going to happen. So you have to start with that you can do things, that you have power, you can connect with people, and you can filter out like all the negative voices that the media is throwing at you, because the aim of that is to disempower you. It's not in their interest that we organize together. It is not in their interest that we even, on from one person to another, teach one, each one teach one. That's the beginning. So you have to connect to people from your heart, from your person, and but you have to also understand yourself. So I think that's where, we have to really examine, self-examine, become self-aware. And to go to what PJ was saying about Scientific Soul, that's the project of Scientific Soul, is to combine the science or the analytics with the soul, and there's a big, strong emphasis in Scientific Soul of arts, culture, creative activity to political organizing, to like analyzing the landscape of oppression, and to overturn that through. And the function of art, really, culture, is to inspire the imagination of what's possible. We have to expand that, because everything is telling us that we can't do it, is impossible. And we're telling ourselves on a daily level, we put limits on ourselves. We don't know what our limits are. If you just take off the limit, you're going to find a different story. And it's a continual process, because there's always something that is an obstacle, and it depends on how strong is your passion, how strong is your why. Why are you here? Are you going to be able to find, especially most important is when you come up against your biggest challenges. That is the real test. That is the most important time for you to find out, like, okay, so do I know why I'm doing something? Do I really know why? Because maybe I'm going to fall back into the comfort zone. So you always have to get out of your comfort zone to challenge yourself. And I think anybody who's achieved anything has always overcome that. And it comes from a personal transformation. So it really has to come from within. And then I do really believe that we are all microcosms of the whole culture. And so without being able to take care of right here, you can't take care of anything out there, because you're just going to continue to replicate. You'll fall before you get to your goal, so you have to really look within. And I think media is about connecting up person to person. And then, but you can use it to create one person to another, to really spread it out, spread the influence, create leaders.
So basically, I work with both of these gentlemen here, so it kind of speaks to the work that I do. But I'm really anxious to hear about the work that you all do in your communities.
So I go to Vermont Law School. I'm an environmental law student focusing on food systems and agriculture. So I'm also they hired me in February to be the director of social media for the Center for Ag and Food Systems. Yeah, it's mostly a title. But I'm doing a lot, but it's not like it's not like a career necessarily. But so I definitely relate to your struggle of Facebook engagement, and sometimes it seems kind of light, and I'm always looking at the analytics of our page, and then I always have to refocus and be right in myself, like, well, am I focused on an issue, or am I focused more on this outcome? Like, I get a good feeling from a lot of engagement or a lot of numbers, but that's not necessarily my goal, so I have to make sure that I'm like kind of finding a balance. So I try to provide good content, and I don't know, I think it's helpful for people. What you said about having a piece that you could just, like, language that you could do across the country, but it lost that local, regional, like, that's definitely smaller social media advantage over mainstream media, is that we're in our own communities and we're much more personalized to people, but it's useful to have both things, I think, because you want to bring in all the people that are interested and make sure that they know about it. So, and it's very interesting hearing all your stories, and I'm learning a lot.
Casey from Boston.
Hi,
independent
Casey.
contractor in enterprise social media management, search engine optimization, and specifically I'm studying the language of colloquialization and how to push language forward and to push people forward with language. So that's what I do.
I think media is language is the biggest form of media, right? It doesn't really have its own label, but like spoken word and those kind of things and music, lyrics and music is very powerful.
I'm really interested in targeting regional rhetoric and like really examining the successes and failures and saying like, okay, this has worked for this region, this has worked for this region, and giving people a framework that isn't a how-to. You know what I mean? Like being able to tell someone like this is the research that you can do to enrich your situation and to make your situation effective. And doing this research will work across the board, but not handing them a how-to document saying do this thing and this is your return. Exactly. So I'm very interested in giving people the tools to empower them to move their movements forward rather than telling them how to do it.
Right, I forgot to say my name is Emma. And also I wanted to say one big thing that I have to bear in mind too is that the message can't be the whole thing. Like you should be attracting people to something that like they can actually come to and participate in.
And own a little bit. Yeah,
otherwise it is passive and it is just your own sort of gratification of getting your message out. There's nowhere to engage it. It has to go somewhere. So trying.
Statistically, the most effective businesses on the internet are the ones that convert spectators to participators. I mean, the top 5 websites on the internet right now are Google, Facebook, Live.com, Yahoo, and MSN. So it's like all of those forced participation. It's like you can't do anything on the website without actually doing something. So I mean, that's sort of the necessity, like the mind frame that we have to get into, because that also works in business and it also works in social movements.
You can see that about Google, that pops out.
Yeah, you can't do anything except search, so you're forced to participate. Like you have to be active in the involvement. So it's like if we can figure out a way to like because it's just a gimmick, but like I mean a series of gimmicks is a business model, right?
It's interesting that you say that because it's already been stated about major media, and maybe we should, like home in on what is the tactic that they use. It's called marketing, right? And in marketing, you have to have certain types of degrees, correct? You have to have a degree in psychology, psychiatry. You have to know your colors. You have to know your aromas. And to get what you were saying about bringing regions together, or like this region that, well how does the political campaign, and I'm going to use campaign the way they mean it, the political war to win the populace. New York thinks one way, California thinks another way, Washington State thinks this way, and Florida thinks another kind of way. Well, how do they do it? They do studies, study this and we studied that and coin phrases and boo 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 boo. So the format is really out there already. Maybe the left or whoever has to look at the format and adjust it, because the format is neutral.
Exactly. There's no value to it.
Right. It's just neutral.
Yeah.
So if we could use these marketing skills that are shown to work for good, maybe that's not a good word, good, for the purpose of getting the message you want across, then there's a possibility that we won't be just looking at numbers. We won't be just feeling like, I'm trying, but I'm not reaching people, or getting the numbers and just talk to people. I got 1,000 hits. I got 100,000 hits. But what does that mean?
Peter made a great point that like the idea, like the push behind media is to immobilize and to get people into a position of not making a decision or fear or indecisiveness. And I think that the emerging left, or like the P2 left, the new progressive left, so to speak, is really pushing towards action and encouraging people to make their own life decisions and making changes in their own life. So, I mean, it's flipping that switch. In my mind, it's like it's really getting people to like get out of that immobile mindset and actually like into the actual, I don't know how to say it, like
Stream?
Like into that media stream, into that social media push or whatever it is, making it ubiquitous that it's your choice. Not saying this is the action you should take part in, but that it's your choice and you have freedom of choice. Because that's something that's not presented at all on mainstream media. They're not saying they're saying you should do this, they're not saying you have a choice. And by removing that choice, they're putting people in the position of saying, well, if I choose, something bad will happen.
So they really need to take ownership of it and be confident that they can
Exactly.
I just have a comment that kind of goes off that. Like, with advertising, a big part of it is like selling the idea that you do have a choice, but your choice is to consume something that is gonna like improve your life, but you can't improve yourself unless you have this product.
Yeah.
But then like the next commercial comes on and you need this one, or the thing you just bought isn't the thing that's gonna save you anymore, and it kind of like helps perpetuate this feeling of hopelessness because you're like constantly consuming these products to try to find something within yourself. But at the end of the day, you have nothing inside, but you have this apartment filled with all these things that you don't use.
That's marketing.
Yeah.
You know, we are dealing with the fact that we are no longer human beings. In the business world, you are a consumer. And a consumer consumes.
Your disposable income.
That's all you do. Well, that's what you learned. Some other people will say, they work and do whatever they do, and they gamble it. You know, it's no longer disposable income. They just take their money and they win some and they lose some. And they go with the whole thing that creates. You know, it creates a situation whereas, oh, I won $1 million. Oh, we happy, hey, card, woo. But the money, because you want it that way, you're not a planner. You're a gambler. So you do, and that's how you live. And could be a week, could be a year, you're broke again. So you go through this cycle, you know. So we're talking about breaking the cycle in terms of not being a consumer. Because that's the way we are dealt with. They don't respect that you have intelligence because, an example, my grandson sits in the car. His mother's driving. McDonald's. He was 3. I'm going. Wendy's. You know, all the Arby's. I'm going. Oh, he's brilliant. Oh. Then I said, well, he's brilliant in one way. Marketing is smarter. Because at 3 years old, now if he didn't have the discipline, you know, like, no, you're not going to McDonald's. He could bawl out, McDonald's. And what is that? Oh, don't go to McDonald's. You don't want to go to McDonald's. You want to spend a cent in McDonald's. But because the marketing was so good, got your child buck wild, you're going to go to McDonald's. And you're going to pull out your money, even though you probably fed them some oatmeal at home or whatever you did, you know, blah, 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 prepare for this little trip. But it's just destroyed because the child wants that damn McDonald's. Now, how can the left or the progressive people get that same, achieve that same effect, the same effect for change? That's, I believe, our struggle.
I think that, like, if you'll pardon my language, marketing aspect of it and the consumership aspect of it appeals to the eat fucking fight mentality. Like, it's like we need to eat, we need to defend our territory. Like, pardon my language, I know that
you hit it on the head though.
but like that's the idea that you're appealing to. Like, and like I think that we need to break down our ideas to the lowest common denominator. Like, how do we get past? Because it's like we have these complex concepts, like food sustainability. Like, it still has to do with eating, but it's a much more complex idea than I'm hungry McDonald's. So it's like, how do we break it down to that simple concept and then regrow that sort of like intelligence? You know what I mean? Like, I just, the challenge that we face is like taking it from this very simple concept that somebody wants this thing to we want people to want this better thing, but it's much more complex.
Well, we have to get to know that we can do that. A lot of people have no idea that switch is possible. And what is your name beyond the camera?
Christy.
Christy, yeah. I mean, she was talking about that, you know, in terms of like, you know, that there's a you know, a sense that, you know, your inner core is lacking. You know, and I think what you're saying is a total switch in which you're saying like I can create my own, because all I have to do is work with somebody else and be of service and create by giving, and by doing that, you know, you start the other person that you're going to help is going to do the same, and so you start like doing the opposite rather than like I need. It's like I can give because I have something in me to give.
And I know that they need it.
And they need it too. We can all create something much larger than ourselves by giving, rather than like I need, and I need to do my little life and take care of like all these lacks in my life. And it's something that, you know, talked about in, you know, Marxist theory, etc. You know, that we're, you know, that's a capitalist game, is to that, you know, we're always dependent on a large something else that is going to provide what we don't have.
And so I'm going to wrap this up. See other panels wrapping up as well. And basically, we all have a role to play in social change. Some of us know our roles, some of us are media people. And as media people, I alluded to this before, it's like, are we using media to kind of cover social movements? What happened, you know, there was a protest, it was Occupy Wall Street, and the media went there to cover it? Or is it media being used as the tool, as the vehicle for social change? And I feel like that's really what's been my role in creating media, and understanding that, yes, it is a product, it is a business, it's something that has to be funded. So one of the things that I've been working on is creating media that can kind of shape a more positive society. So this is actually my social, you know, my piece in the social change, and I think that we can do a lot more work around that. I've known revolutionaries like I don't know if anybody knows Sir Chamoy. He was more of a spiritual revolutionary, but he painted and he made music and he held workshops around meditation and around food sovereignty and eating right as well. You know, raising the consciousness around nutrition. And I think all of these different forms and modes need to be actively worked on. Like, we need to be active media personnel and communicate the things that we know inside from our heart that would be good, especially for the next generations, and be creative around that, be innovative, because there's going to be a lot more products coming out, but are we shaping it, or we're letting it be shaped and then, okay, we're just hopping on to use it? Because Facebook and all these things weren't things that are foreign to us. These are things that naturally made sense in how our society was progressing. So I encourage everyone, the media people in the room, to continue to use their mediums for social change. I thank you so much for being a part of our panel today.
Thank you.